Oh,
Let me know when to start.
Just a minute. I didn't do something. Let me just stop sharing for a minute, please.
Whenever you're ready, Dale, you can go ahead and start. We're still letting people in.
Excellent.
Okay. Greetings. I am Dale Hill, a member of the Committee for the Contemporary Issues Forum, or CIF, formerly called Coffee, Controversy, and Conversation, or CC&C. The River Road Unitarian Church has held these forums for over 20 years. Carl Weichel and I will co-host this session. So RRUC members and visitors, welcome. I think we've done some of the housekeeping. As Loretta said, the session will be recorded. You can always turn off your video if you don't want your image on the recording. This is the last forum of the season. We will resume in September, possibly in person in the Fireside Room. If you have ideas for speakers, or indeed, if you would like to serve on the committee, please contact myself or the outgoing committee chairs, Kim and Carl Weichel, or Loretta Garcia. It's an exciting job I enjoy greatly. We will hold all questions while the speaker delivers his presentation for about 35 to 40 minutes, and then open up for Q&A. Please use the chat for questions. Carl and I will consolidate them and pose them to the speaker. And then at the end, if there is time, we may also open up for live questions. We may also allow the session to run a bit past 1 o'clock if there are more questions than the speaker is willing. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Lennox Graham. Dr. Graham is an educator, motivational speaker, author of a book called Navigating the System at Howard University, and a practitioner with extensive experience in the design, delivery, and evaluation of instructional programs and management assessment models. His current position is Director of Recruitment for Clinical Trials at Howard University. He holds a Master of Science degree in education and a doctoral degree in management and organizational leadership. While his bio contains many diverse activities, what I find particularly interesting are two accomplishments. First, his initiation of a community-based teaching laboratory at Howard University, where he asked seniors to speak on their life experiences and presented them with a certificate to affirm their self-worth. Second, his founding of a community alliance for research engagement, which involved 12 pastors near Howard University in engaging their congregations in clinical trials at the university. Now, over to you, Dr. Graham.
Thank you, Gail, for that warm introduction. I would like to express my appreciation to the members of the Contemporary Forum for extending this invitation to me to present. We are going to have a wonderful time today. I would like to share with you some very important information that will lift your self-image. Let's begin. Let us talk a little bit about the facts about our brain. You know, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And here are some facts about your brain. We have about 100 billion nerve cells in our brain. Just fathom that thought. 100 billion nerve cells in our brain. Each nerve cell can grow up to 200,000 branches. And the way that happens is that when you start to learn new things, when you delve into new areas, those nerve cells, those neurons start to multiply. And that is very, very important. We have to keep our mind engaged. We have a fantastic brain. Look at this. Your brain is processing over 400 billion actions per second. As I'm speaking to you now, your brain is just working for you. This is fantastic. And so we use our brain to do little things, but our brain can do big things if we would only allow it. All our brain is asking for is input. It wants to get input from us. And so we need to always keep our mind engaged. Word games, things of that nature. It excites the mind. You know, there's a research that was done that showed people who are looking at the television, their brain is not active. It's asleep. But when they start to read a book or do something that involves some critical thinking, you see their blood just starts to flow in the brain. Those are things that we need to engage ourselves in and keep our mind alert and alive. Now, Philippians 4:8 says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are noble, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. I never realized how powerful an instruction that is and what it can do for us if we do as the scripture has indicated for us to do. Now, it's imperative that we focus on positive things. Happiness, joy, peace, love, hope, excitement. It's important that we do that, because when we do that, the endorphins start to flow. There's something positive that happens within us when we are in a positive mode. Your mind, it just do wonderful things for you when you are in that positive mode. And we must understand the power of I am, thinking in the positive way. You know, I tell my students, when they set their goals, they must set it in the present tense. I am what it is you want to be. I am always on time. Because you have a subconscious mind that will say to you, if you say, I am always late, the subconscious mind would say to you, when you are on time, let me know. So we need to put things in the present tense. I am always on time. That brings the subconscious mind, then brings it into fruition. When you're asleep, the subconscious mind is working on that instruction to bring you on time. Because if you continue to say you're never on time, you will never be on time. Act as if it has already happened. So the power of being on time, of saying that you're always on time. And then when you speak to people, always have a positive approach. Someone comes to you with a negative thing, you can say, I understand exactly how you feel. Others have felt the same way, but we have always found, and then you bring that positive thing in there to take them from apathy to action. Positivity. Always focus on that. And let those endorphins flow. When people are negative, you know, the poet says, if you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it is almost certain you won't. If you think you're a loser, you've lost. For out in the world, you'll find that success begins in the fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to believe in yourself if you would ever win a prize. You see, life's battles does not always go to the faster or stronger man, but sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. So this area of thinking is critical. Now, let me give you a picture of what happens in the mind when you are thinking positively. Isn't that beautiful? That's how your mind looks, like a flourishing plant when you are in that positive state. This is how the mind appears, alive, full of life. That's your mind. On the other hand, when you entertain negative emotions like anger, fear, despair, sadness, frustration, jealousy, grief, shame, depression, when you entertain these negative thoughts, something happens to that mind. And let me give you a picture of what occurs. You remember that green plant we looked at just now? You don't want this to happen to your mind. And that is why that verse in Philippians, that we should focus on uplifting things. This is what will happen to your mind. Your mind will die an unnatural death. So I want you to always bear that in mind, to be positive. There's something that happens when you are positive. When you are not, when you don't put yourself under the circumstances, but always above the circumstances. Because when you're under the circumstances, the air is not fresh. The air is it's congested. It's hot. But when you're above the circumstances, the air is fresher and the view is better. Always strive to be above the circumstances, and you become above the circumstances with your thought process. That is very, very important. Now, let us take a look now at your mind and the memory loss, the causes of dementia, the causes of dementia. We can have memory loss because of vitamin deficiencies. We can have memory loss because of thyroid gland problems, medication, deep depression. All these things can bring memory loss on, but these situations are reversible. You can reverse these situations. The doctor can give you medication for these conditions and it will get better for you. Now, there are irreversible conditions here, like vascular changes in the brain. Those things are irreversible. Alzheimer's disease. It's something that is slow and steady, irreversible. Parkinson's disease can bring memory loss. Chronic infections can bring on permanent memory loss. So we want to bear that in mind. And when people talk about dementia, dementia is not a disease. It's a combination of symptoms that have many causes, one of which is Alzheimer's disease. So dementia is the umbrella under which Alzheimer's sits, Parkinson's sits, chronic brain infection sits, vascular changes in the brain sits. That's the umbrella. So when we speak about dementia, Dementia is not a disease, it's a combination of symptoms that have many causes. So that's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. Dementia is that umbrella under which these various memory loss agents sits. Okay. My screen seemed to have frozen. Let me see what I can do about that. Let's see. Okay. My screen is still frozen.
Did you send the presentation to Carl and Dale?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me stop sharing.
We're seeing your screen, Dr. Graham. It's in a full gout now.
Yeah, let me just try again. Okay. I don't know why it gets into that.
Are you able to email it to us now? But one of us can pull it up.
We can just try for a minute.
Okay.
Or you
Let
can
me
talk
see.
without slides if you prefer.
No, I think it's very important because the next slide is very critical to the understanding of this subject that we are dealing with right now.
Dr. Graham, we could try one thing. We saw the slides when you had that up in screen share. Possibly I could tell you to advance once you've finished it, if it's more an issue of just the screen, but.
Okay. I'm seeing here all my slides, and I've never seen that before.
Now we don't. So if you can go off of screen share.
Yes. Okay. Okay, I'm off of screen share. Let me just check on something here. Okay.
Okay, now we're seeing the original. And
why am I going in? Why is it coming up in this manner? Okay, let's see.
now we're seeing it.
Okay.
Yeah, now you can advance it.
Right, I'm advancing.
Go slowly,
now,
there we go.
Right, so now I'd like to share with you a video that tells you about the process of Alzheimer's disease and how it works. Let's go.
What is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's is a slow, fatal disease of the brain affecting 1 in 10 people over the age of 65. No one is immune. The disease comes on gradually as 2 abnormal protein fragments called plaques and tangles accumulate in the brain and kill brain cells. They start here in the hippocampus, the part of the brain where memories are first formed. Over many years' time, the plaques and tangles slowly destroy the hippocampus, and it becomes harder and harder to form new memories. Simple recollections from a few hours or days ago that the rest of us might take for granted are just not there. After that, more plaques and tangles spread into different regions of the brain, killing cells and compromising function wherever they go. This spreading around is what causes the different stages of Alzheimer's. From the hippocampus, the disease spreads here to the region of the brain where language is processed. When that happens, it gets tougher and tougher to find the right word. Next, the disease creeps toward the front of the brain, where logical thought takes place. Very gradually, a person begins to lose the ability to solve problems, grasp concepts, and make plans. Next, the plaques and tangles invade the part of the brain where emotions are regulated. When this happens, the patient gradually loses control over moods and feelings. After that, the disease moves to where the brain makes sense of things it sees, hears, and smells. In this stage, Alzheimer's wreaks havoc on a person's senses and can spark hallucinations. Eventually, the plaques and tangles erase a person's oldest and most precious memories, which are stored here in the back of the brain. Near the end, the disease compromises a person's balance and coordination, and in the very last stage, it destroys the part of the brain that regulates breathing and the heart. The progression from mild forgetting to death is slow and steady, and takes place over an average of 8 to 10 years. It is relentless and, for now, incurable. Helping your family, friends, and neighbors to better understand Alzheimer's will reduce stigma, improve care, and even help the fight for a cure. Thanks for helping to do your part.
Now that is a very important video. And in a nutshell, it brings Alzheimer's up front and personal with us. I have had the experience, Mom, having to see the changes in her thought process. I saw those stages along the way. Here with her, standing with her, and she would say, "What are you doing standing in that water?" She would say to me. And I would say to her, "Mom, I'm not standing in water. I'm right here with you. Look." And I would make that sound on the floor and say, and she would smile. And I told her, I said, "Mom, there's going to come a time when you're not going to recognize me as your son. But I want you to know that anytime you see this," and she would smile. And that is the type of relationship that I had with my mom. I learned very soon that it's not a good idea to get in a confrontation with someone who has Alzheimer's. You cannot win that battle. You need to be very understanding of them. And if the person it's very, very important that you have that empathy for them. Because what happens, like, for example, somebody for a spoon and they're asking for a plate. And if you were to put them down and say, "Mom, this is not you said you wanted a spoon, but you wanted a plate," and you make a big deal out of it, they may just stop talking. They may not respond to you in any because you did not have the right attitude. So I want you to always bear that in mind. And I talked about the best kept secret, and the best kept secret is exercise. You have to exercise. The brain uses 25% of the body's oxygen, and it uses a lot of oxygen. And when you exercise, bring more oxygen to the brain. And that is very, very important. Flow coming to the brain to keep oxygen coming to the brain. It's important for learning, and it's important for memory. It's very, very important. There are clinical trials going on right now between stretch exercise and aerobic exercise. And both of these exercises show that memory improves. So that is very, very critical. And I would like for you to pay careful attention to that. and your heart rejoices when you exercise. Your heart rejoices. Your heart is a pump and it needs to get that exercise. So I make time, and if you cannot move, you get 2 cans of beans and you just do your arms and for a certain period of time and get the heart rate going up. That is very critical to your health. Now, Alzheimer's is the only leading cause of death that is still on the rise. It is still on the rise. Scientists are doing their best to get a knowledge, to get an understanding as to what is causing Alzheimer's. You know, before now, you used to have to, you would have to die in order for people to say, oh, this person had Alzheimer's. And now you can use a PET scan and you can see the amyloid build up in the brain, and you can tell that someone died from Alzheimer's disease. But we are working feverishly in terms of getting to the cure for Alzheimer's disease. 6.2 million Americans currently have Alzheimer's disease. 1.1 million are African Americans. 6th leading cause of death for all Americans, and the 4th for older African Americans. Over 16 million Americans provide 18.6 billion hours of unpaid care for people living with Alzheimer's, valued at nearly 244 billion. The care for people with Alzheimer's, it takes a lot out of you. I can recall going back to my mom, I went there to visit with her, and all night my mom would be up, talking, cannot sleep. And I would go and I would put my arms around her and I say, Mom, you'll be okay. But I want you to get some rest. It's important for you to get some rest. And she would calm down, and then she will lie down, and then she will go back and she will start talking again. Now, people who have to take care of their loved ones who have Alzheimer's, it takes its toll on you. The question is, who will take care of the caregiver? So we have to pay attention to those who are working and taking care of family members who have Alzheimer's. And I know during the question and answer period, I know there would be people who would say, yes, I understand exactly what you're talking about. It does take its toll, but we have to, you know, keep on giving them a good quality of life. It's very important for us to do that. Now, African Americans make up 13.6% of the US population, but bear over 33% of the costs of Alzheimer's and other dementia. African Americans are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's as non-Hispanic whites. Genetic and environment factors may work differently to cause Alzheimer's disease in African Americans. Women are up to 2/3 of the American population living with Alzheimer's disease. Women in their 60s are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's than breast cancer. That's an important fact. And 2/3 of Alzheimer's and dementia caregivers are women. And you know, there's something special about women and that motherly attention, because I can recall my niece who took care of my mom. She would just have that love and care for her. When she's taking her to the bathroom, she would make it a big show. Let's dance. She would dance with my mom, taking her to the bathroom, and my mom would be laughing. It was just a wonderful moment that they shared together. And so I know that motherly nature that was in my niece, she showed it to my mom. The cause, the case for the cost, the call to action is that 40% of all Americans living with Alzheimer's. 40% of all Americans are living with Alzheimer's, and that is a serious number. Projected Alzheimer's prevalence among African Americans and Latinos, there you can see it. The blue is the Latinos, and the yellow or stripe there, the African Americans. It's all rising. It's all going up. The economic impact of Alzheimer's on African American people. You can see here that African Americans make up about 13% of the US population, but bear over 33% of the cost of Alzheimer's. We mentioned that. The economic burden of Alzheimer's for African Americans was $71.6 billion in 2012. These costs are expected to more than double in 2050. Caregiving represents the bulk of these costs, more than 60%. Okay. I seem to be in that stop mode again. Let me see.
Dr. Graham, why don't you stop screen share?
Okay.
And that pause in the computer may allow it, and then click back on.
Mm-hmm. We're going to make it through this.
Okay.
Okay.
That seems to work.
Let's see. Still not making that move. Okay, let me do something here. Let me move to the next slide and open it on that. Okay.
While we're paused, let me just remind people to place their questions in the chat, and we'll take those at the end.
Okay. Just a minute. Let me see here. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Alzheimer's risks, risk management. One of the things that we have to always do is to monitor our blood pressure. That is very important. Exercise, we talked about that. Cognitive training, word games, reading, interacting, being a part of groups, and doing those types of things. Your diet is very, very important. Sleep, combination. These are very, very important things for you to be doing in order for you to maintain a healthy mind. I continue to get this stoppage with the screen.
This is why we generally have the speaker send their presentation in advance. I'm very sorry
Yes.
we don't have it.
Okay.
Dr. Graham, we could leave it in that reduced size mode if it would help.
Yes, I
And,
think,
and then you could advance the slides, not with your mouse, but on those 4 keys, left and then down, up and down. You could push it that way.
yes, I think we will do it that way. And so one of the things that we need to pay attention to is prevention. And we must do promotion of brain health, helping people to understand why they need to take control of their mind and how we can stop the progression of Alzheimer's disease. I want to share with you let's see. Okay. Just a minute. Okay, diet. Diet is a critical component of our brain health.
Dr. Graham, one thing, if on the right side of your screen, I'm seeing always use subtitles, which is an instruction. If you click that X, it should enlarge satisfactory. There we go. Now that's perfect for the rest of the show.
Thank you. Very, very good. Okay. Now we mentioned diet, and some of the things that I want you to pay attention to, some of the foods for mind diet is rich in vegetables, berries, and whole grains. That is very, very important. Eating those things help in brain health. And I would like to recommend that you pay attention to that. In terms of your diet, we talked about exercise, how important that is. And also clinical research. If you have ever taken a pill or been treated for an illness, you have seen the benefit of clinical research. You know, we would like to encourage participants into clinical trials, because if I were to ask any of you if you take a tablet or a pill, you will certainly say yes. But you know that in order for you to get that tablet or that pill, someone had to be in a clinical trial to make it possible. And so that is why we cannot sit on the fence and wait for things to happen. We have got to be a part of the solution. And so I encourage people to get involved in clinical trials, because you cannot transpose the results of one race onto another. Everyone has got to be involved in order for everyone to benefit from the results of the research. Now, whenever we are going out and talking to people about Alzheimer's disease and trying to get them involved in participating in clinical trials, we will ask them, what concerns you most about Alzheimer's disease? That your senior moments are earliest signs of Alzheimer's disease, the potential loss of dignity and independence, no treatment or cure yet, that you will be burdened to your family, having no one to take care of you. Those are things that are of concern to people. And we should not get overly alarmed if we cannot find our keys. They say, man, I'm getting Alzheimer's. That's not a true barometer to say that you're getting memory loss. I think that we should become concerned if we are going to a grocery store for years and we went to that grocery store and we can't find our way back home. Now that is something to be of concern. But not finding your keys when you place it somewhere is not, you should not be overly concerned about that. And then we would ask the question, would you consider yourself a kind and caring person? And people would say yes. And then we would ask the question, if your primary care physician told you that after reviewing your medical history that several of your family members will lose their precious memories, what would you do about that? That would be the question that we will ask them. Would you be concerned? And they would say, yes, we'll be concerned. And then we would ask them the question, and if your physician said to you that there is a drug that has the potential of preventing this awful thing from happening to your family, what would you say? And they often say that they would say that they would want to know more about that drug. And then we would say, and then we would then introduce them to a clinical trial. And more often than not, people get involved in that clinical trial. And I always like to end by saying, knowing is not enough, we must apply. And willing is not enough, we must do. Thank you very much.
Dr. Graham, if we could now, if you could stop screen share and we can go into gallery view, then we can engage everyone together.
Certainly.
And Dale and Loretta, do you want to start with the chat questions? And then if we have some time on the left, we can answer questions spontaneously. Dale, you're on mute.
Thank you. I think the very first question was in fact answered. Besides daily exercise, what else can be done? I think you already answered that in a slide. There's another question I posed actually in the movie Fantastic Fungi. If you haven't seen that, you really must. An emphasis was placed on promising current research that showed that eating mushrooms or fungus could strengthen the brain and slow the development of Alzheimer's. Are you aware of this?
I am somewhat aware of it, but I think those things are still in the research mode. People are trying their best. We also talk about amyloid protein in the brain, and we don't know exactly what role that is playing. Researchers are also working on that, but everything right now people are doing their utmost best to come up with answers to that problem. So I cannot say for sure that that is something that is being dwelled upon, but it is certainly something that is going on right now.
Okay, another person asks, what is the history of this disease? I guess you could address both dementia in general and Alzheimer's. Was it present in Roman times, for example? Are there any writings about it in early history?
Well, you know, Alzheimer's disease, people may not have looked at it as being Alzheimer's, but Alzheimer's have been around for days of yore. The professor for whose name Alzheimer's is named, when he came up with it, people started to get a greater focus on the disease at that point. And we start to investigate it, start to research it, but it has been around for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Graham, if I could interject. So it is very true that because most people get, and I'm sorry, everyone, my name is Julian Turner. I'm
Julian is a part of our team at Dr.
Yes. And so I'm used to giving presentations to the public. So I can answer that question in the sense that we don't have physical documentation of Alzheimer's disease being present in Roman times. It is still diagnosed even today via autopsy with examining of the brain tissue based off of the different brain volumes and shrinkages of its ventricles and brain tissue, classified in Dr. Alice's Alzheimer's case study of August D, which he presented at a conference in 1906. And so while we don't know if that was around in modern times, we do know that dementia, which is basically the medical classification of symptoms as it relates to memory loss, has been around since Dr. Graham has mentioned times of yore. And many people get dementia confused with Alzheimer's disease in the sense of Alzheimer's disease is a specific disease and disorder, and it has elements or symptoms of dementia, but there are many other diseases and disorders that have dementia in them. So for instance, traumatic brain injury, people who have severe traumatic brain injury. So when you think about the football players with the CTE, there have been people who've experienced memory loss and issues as a result of those traumatic brain disorder. Vascular dementia, which is a result of strokes. You can have Lewy body dementia. So obviously in Roman times, you could have people who've experienced strokes or brain injuries significantly where they would develop symptoms of memory loss. So that has been documented. But Alzheimer's disease itself hasn't been documented as a result of Roman times. But dementia as a symptom of medical categories has been reported previously.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing, Jillian.
I think, Hamid, you had another question, maybe with a typo in it. Can you take a look? I don't understand. Is this reason less in blank countries?
I think it's meat-eating countries.
Meat-eating countries.
I think we have a nutritionist here with us. Tekem, you wanted to respond to that question?
Hello, everyone. I'm not aware of anything in the literature that makes that distinction. Remember that, but there has been association of Mediterranean type of diet, or diet that is predominantly involve marine organism, fish, and things from the sea, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, bulk in their diet, and whole grain. The diet that are extremely high in those, or that predominantly those aspects, have been associated with less dementia. If you look at centurions in Japan, Japan has the highest, I believe, number of centurions in the world, and most of them have their memory, they have intact memory, even up to the age of 115. In the southern Europe, along the Mediterranean coast and North Africa, they've also been less incidents of Alzheimer's compared to as you move inland. I think there are studies to support that, but the reason is not clear. We do know that there's component of inflammation in Alzheimer's. And so the diet that are predominantly high in omega-3, they tend to sort of reduce incidence of inflammation or chronic inflammation in the body. That may be an aspect of, or the benefit derived from that type of diet. But there are quite a bit of information in the literature right now supporting Mediterranean type diet. That's why in our studies at Howard, we encourage individuals to consume more of Mediterranean type diet relative to the traditional American diet.
Okay.
There's a question, there's a hand up there. I think there are two hands. Mr. Weichel and then Aziz, Mr. Aziz. Yeah.
Okay, Natalie, can
May I
you
speak?
unmute Carl
Carl, can you unmute yourself?
and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Graham, there was so much information here today that it's a frustrating reality that we all face, but I was so touched the way that you related with us about your experience with your mother and the extra empathy that you did. Now, needless to say, you're pretty advanced in your field. It doesn't come naturally to us, and we often think, you know, bereaved by someone we love, what they're going through. But I think there were just, that to emphasize what can we do in various cases, especially with our loved ones. And what you said there, I went to an article that was recently in the New York Times, Science Times, by an adult daughter that wrote a beautiful essay, and people can search this out without being a New York Times subscriber. And it's called "Dementia is a Place Where My Mother Lives. It is not who she is." And I just want to read just two long sentences that emphasize what you were doing with your mother. "When my mom travels in her mind, she sometimes takes me along. She demonstrates her own version of what Einstein knew, that time is indeed relative, passing at different rates for different people. She asks after my father, gone 45 years, where is Richard? Dad's not here right now, Mom, but he's fine. I'm pleased to speak of my father in the present tense. Visitors to dementia know that everyone is fine, no matter how long he or she has been dead. There's a wonderful economy of souls happening here, where no one is actually gone, and we are all comrades on the road." So, you know, we might all think of that in a kind of a spiritual sense, the role that we can help people's lives when we engage with them with that form of projection.
Well, thank you so much, Carl. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you're ready for the next question, Hamid, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Good afternoon, doctor. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, sir.
Your presentation tends to be more about the prescriptive, not the descriptive part of it. Some of us remember something called the mad cow disease. That happened recently. Some of us who are not in your field have this prejudice idea that is red meat, especially the cow red meat, that contributes heavily on this one. So once again, I ask the question, in the non-meeting in countries where the Buddhist religion reigns, all the way from Malaysia to the Manchuria, all the way from India, is this disease less or non-existent? And is the edict that red meat is the main contributing factor to it is in or not?
Okay, I have an expert right here with me, Dr. Ntekem. Dr. Ntekem, would you share the response to that question?
We find Alzheimer's across the world. So red meat is not necessarily a contributing factor to that. To red meat in moderation, or should I say meat in general in moderation, is healthy. So we have Alzheimer's in India, in Asia, even among the Buddhist monks. There is incidence of Alzheimer. Don't forget that there's a genetic component to it. We are studying about 16 genes at Howard, 16 genes at Howard University, which humans carry. And so depending on the combination of those genes that you carry, we've seen people with 4 of those genes, we see people with 2, depending on their ancestry. These genes are exchanged. So when they interact with the environment, it may not necessarily be diet. It could be a combination of diet and stress, environmental stress. It could be toxins in the environment. It could be lifestyle. All of these contribute to should I say, progression of that disease state. We've seen families where the two parents died from Alzheimer's, and then a family of 4, 2 have early Alzheimer's, the other 2 in their late 70s, they don't have Alzheimer's. So how do you explain that? And they grew up in the same house, same family, same country, which is the United States, and their lifestyle is pretty much the same. So red meat in moderation has not been demonstrated to drive Alzheimer's disease.
And Dr. Graham, this is Dr. Javed Khan. With your permission, can I just add something what Dr. Takam just said?
Yes, Dr. Khan is a part of our team at Howard University. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Mr. Aziz, the question that you asked about the prion disease, the prion, what is a prion? Prion are smaller than the virus, and these mad cow disease. The prion, once it enters into the brain, it rapidly destroys the brain. And while the Alzheimer is a slow onset progression disease, so that is a little difference between these two. And again, as Dr. Takam said, the red meat is not directly associated with the Alzheimer's disease incidence rate is high, but indirectly with high cholesterol level can lead to Alzheimer's disease dementia. Hope it will answer.
Okay, Dale Hill, have another question. What about early onset Alzheimer's? Do you have any idea what percentage of Alzheimer's is early onset? And I guess we need a definition of it. And how would people like ourselves recognize that? You say losing your keys is not early onset Alzheimer's, but and I understand there is a drug for early onsets, which is why it's important to know. But you know, what is the type of memory loss that would signal early onset Alzheimer's?
Well, the type of memory loss is something that you ought to be very familiar with, as I had mentioned when I was speaking. Like going to your grocery store, you've been there for years. You've been there, you've been to the grocery store, you went back home for years. And all of a sudden, you don't know how to get to that grocery store. That is truly cause for concern. You know, that is truly cause for concern. With respect to your keys, you could be going into the house, but you're thinking about something that you have to do at work. And your thoughts are there, you rest the keys down, and your thoughts are elsewhere. You did not really pay attention to what you had done in terms of where you placed the key. And so when you're looking for the key, you just can't find it. That is just a temporary situation. Yeah.
I guess not to contradict you, but I would argue that the stage where you get lost at a grocery store, which happened to my father and caused the senior home to, you know, restrict his access to outside, take away the car keys, is a fairly advanced stage. But suppose somebody repeats what they say several times, for example, and they don't remember having said it before. Isn't that an indication of early Alzheimer's?
Yes, you see, the first stage, the first place that Alzheimer's hits is your hippocampus.
Right.
Your hippocampus is where your present memories are. And
yeah.
Yes, and that, so when you see that happening, that is something that you need to pay attention to. But again, if Dad asks the question 1,000 times, you respond as if he's just asking it for the first time.
Yeah, I know we need to be empathic.
Yes.
Yeah. Empathetic. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I chime in here, please? I'm sorry to what Ms. Hill just said is very important. The statement she just made, that when one of the clear should I say demarcation there is this, that once you have long-term memory from things that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you still have them. But memory of immediate event, things that happened the last hour, that's clearly a sign of not just what we define as medium, like mid-state Alzheimer's, but early Alzheimer's also. You begin to see that in the late period of early Alzheimer's. And early Alzheimer's also is age-related. So when you see people in their late 40s and early 50s beginning to exhibit those characteristics, there could be Alzheimer's, but we have to be careful because Alzheimer's has its own specific criteria that you use for diagnosis. But there are other types of dementia that may be related to long-term vitamin B12 deficiency. You also have Lewy body dementia. You have vascular dementia. So one must first medically rule out those other types of dementia. Then one could clearly say, look, it could be Alzheimer's. Because vascular dementia, uncontrolled hypertension, you get these microvascular strokes, infarcts, and over time it adds up and suddenly somebody will lose their memory. And the memory loss is just like Alzheimer's. So one must first rule out Lewy body dementia, dementia due to any other reasons before saying leaning towards Alzheimer's. Fortunately, there are scans, brain scans now that are in the preliminary stages that can actually that can give a sense of what is happening. PET scan can actually show that, because you will see the amyloid deposit, the neurofibrillary tangles, all of those. You are going to clearly see them in the PET scan, and what could then say with some level of confidence that it is more of Alzheimer's as opposed to. And also shrinking of the brain volume begins to get smaller and smaller in Alzheimer's relative to the other types of dementia.
Thank you. I will note that it is 1 o'clock, actually a little past 1 o'clock now. We do have a question, if you're willing to take a question from me, and then Hamid Aziz has more questions if you want to entertain them. Doctor, are you pressed for time, or do you want to take a couple more questions?
We'll take a couple more questions.
Okay. I will ask mine. I read a few years ago, maybe 5 or so, that they had identified an enzyme or a protein that was instrumental or somehow connected with dementia. Is that going anywhere, that kind of research?
I think
Are
you're
you talking about the tau protein?
Dr. Teppan, you have updated information?
Yes, there are several proteins that have been identified that when they interact with brain cells, neurons in the brain, there are multiple proteins that have been identified. And so now the focus is on trying to prevent the deposit of those proteins in the brain. A lot of research going on, particularly in the pharmaceutical industries. In fact, at Howard, in our group, we've been testing some of the, should I say, chemical products that are targeting those proteins to keep them from depositing in neurons in the brain. For Merck Pharmaceutical, Pfizer, and I think 2 other pharmaceutical companies we've been recruiting and testing in the past, trying to prevent those protein deposits in the brain. Amyloid is one of them. The other neurofibrillary tangles. We also have the tau proteins, phosphorylated tau and all of that. Yes, your question is correct, but there's massive research going on at NIH and also in many institutions around the world, trying to understand the mechanism of the deposit and developing countermeasures to prevent those deposits.
Great, thank you. Hamid, please ask your question briefly.
Sorry, Loretta, there are 2 other questions prior to Hamid's, I believe.
That's fine.
Is that all right?
Yes.
The first one is sort of housekeeping. Can we have a link to the video on Alzheimer's, or more broadly, can we have copy of your slides?
I will send them to you, Dale.
Including the video. Okay, thank you. And I will send them on to the others in the audience. Second, are adult volunteers in their early 70s still valuable to your research studies and presumably to other research studies?
Very much so. Gillian can attest to that, Dr. Javad. I think our recruitment is somewhere between 50 and 85.
Yes.
Am I out of the upper limit?
No, you're right, 80 years.
Yes.
Yeah, so there are various research studies, certainly the ones that we deal with at Howard. Our head study deals with trying to remove amyloid protein buildup in the brain before it happens for people who are more at risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And that study is for people 55 up until 80. But generally speaking, if you are at least 55 years old and up to 85, there are a variety of research studies where we're looking for people in that age range as candidates.
Okay, very good. That's one thing I admired about my father, is that before he died, he and my mother did a lot of volunteered for a lot of research studies. Okay, Hamid, over to you quickly. And then that may be the last question we accept. And I just want people to know also there is in the chat a link that Jillian provided about dementia and Alzheimer's. Hamid.
Doctor, thank you very much. Thank you, and to your colleagues.
Yes.
Who took this time in answering our questions and enlightening us. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, in brief, could you give us what's the current stage of either the management or the cure to the extent of reducing the onslaught of this particular disease is?
Well, I would go ahead.
Everything, all of the studies are being done right now I would say in an advanced stage. Understanding the disease, we clearly understand the disease now. The mechanism of each of those contributors, some of them are fully understood, and some of them we are still working on it. Without going too much into details, at Howard, for example, we are also looking at mechanisms that involve all of these proteins, particularly those that have not been clearly elucidated. We are actually actively working on them at the Aging Cognitive Laboratory right now. And the pharmaceutical industries, for the pathways that have been understood, they are developing compounds to counter those, sort of to mediate the process, to sort of truncate the advance of Alzheimer's. And some of the compounds that we have tested, some of them have failed, others show promise. And so there's quite a bit, I would say a lot of studies in that area. The US government, I think they pumped in close to about $280 million additional dollars last year, just focusing on Alzheimer's through the National Institutes of Health. And I think the budget, the new budget for the next year, they are proposing somewhere close to $500 million, just focusing on Alzheimer's alone. So right now, we don't have a cure, but we have a clear sense of some of the mechanisms of the progression, and there's medication in compounds in advanced stages testing. And don't forget, after the preliminary testing, you have to go to stage 2 and stage 3 of testing, and then looking at if not just efficacy, toxicity, side effects, and all of that before it goes to FDA for approval. So we are still a long way from cure of Alzheimer's, or even slowing down Alzheimer's with medication. But the research is on a lot of research going on across the world. And the beauty of it is that they are now pulling data from around the world. So European studies, Australian study, New Zealand study, they are sort of US studies, they are putting the data together and trying to make sense of it all. And that is very, very good. That will really reduce the number of years that we may be able to develop effective drugs for Alzheimer's because of the pooling of data from across the world.
Just to add to what Dr. Teckham said, this is Dr. Javed again. There is some FDA-approved medications like they are the cholinesterase inhibitor, donepezil. Perhaps you heard the name rivastigmine and glutamine. They are FDA-approved drug. They are not exactly the cure, but they slow the progression of the disease. And there are some monoclonal antibodies that are under research. Lately, the beginning of this year or late last year, there was a treatment, aducanumab. There's still, the research is going on, so it's not yet FDA approved. So there is promise, there is something is there that will slow the progression. But as Dr. Teckham said, the research, we still need to do a heavy research on that to find a cure of the disease. So hope it's answered your question, Mr. Aziz.
Dr. Graham, if you have time, I have one final question, which has not been touched on. It has to do with the diagnosis of the cause of death. Okay, I have always wondered, I mean, it seems to me when a person dies, there are often